Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I would like to call this meeting to order and acknowledge that we are in Treaty 1 territory, the home and traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, Innu, and Dakota peoples, and in the national homeland of the Red River Métis. Our drinking water comes from Shoal Lake 40 First Nation in Treaty 3 territory. My name is Carrie Linklater. I am your chairperson this morning, and I am joined via Zoom by Mr. Kent Seelan, and to my left by Ms. Lori Davidson. Our city assessor this morning is Mr. Kem Wong, and our administrative personnel is Ms. Louise Boyley. We will be hearing applications for revision of the assessment roll in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act. The matters for which revision is requested have been described in each application, and we will limit discussion to those matters. The statements that are made at this hearing are sworn testimony, and anyone speaking to the matters must be sworn in. Be advised that comparisons of assessments of properties are not considered evidence of market value by the board. The board is appointed annually by City Council and is independent of it and the city administration. It makes its decisions on the basis of the evidence provided at this hearing and issues a written order that will be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that the board's decisions with respect to an application may be appealed to the Manitoba Municipal Board if the matter pertains to assessed value or classification, or to the Court of King's Bench if the matter pertains to an application of exemptions from taxation. Should you wish to appeal, information on how to do so will be included with the board's order. With respect to the hearing process, I will confirm the points of appeal with your property to be addressed, with each applicant following the swearing in. We will then have the assessor's testimony followed by questions that the applicant may have, and then the applicant's testimony followed by questions. Each side will have an opportunity to summarize if they wish. Once all of the evidence about an application has been brought forward, the applicant may leave. The process will repeat for each item on the docket today. A session will close after all the applications have been heard, and the board will deliberate in private and make its decisions. You will receive the board's decision by registered mail as soon as possible. As information, all public hearings are live streamed, recorded, and will be part of the public record. This morning, we will be hearing items 1 through 8 on the docket. And Ms. Boyley, if you could please confirm the assessor and the applicant's testimony.
Okay, Mr. Assessor, can you please state your full name?
I'm Wong.
Do you affirm that the evidence you're about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. And Mr. Applicant, please state your full name.
My name is Jared Story.
Do you affirm that the evidence you're about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Wong and Mr. Story.
Good morning.
And our first item on the docket is 186 Appleford Gate. Mr. Wong, whenever you are ready, if you would like to start us off.
The subject property is 186 Appleford Gate. The file number is 22-4839. The roll number is 030-929-85945. The roll year is 2021, and the assessed value is $28,728,000. This is a residential apartment. It's 2 to 4 stories high. It was built in 2020, and it has 138 units with 120 outdoor parking stalls. On page 3 is a picture of the subject property with its location. It's just located in the Bridgewater area. On page 4 is our income valuation summary. We use average rents of $1,521 to get a potential income of $2,519,000. We use the 2.4% vacancy to get an effective gross income of $2,459,000. And we use the 41% expense ratio to get a net operating income of $1,436,000. Capped at 5%, we have an estimated market value of $28,728,000. On page 5 are some rent comparables showing that the rents that we've applied are in line with what's in the market. On the bottom of page 5 are some expense comparables that range from 32 to 42%, which supports the model's expense ratio at 41.59%. On page 6 is information on how we derived our cap rates. And on page 7 are some cap rate sales that range from 4 to 6.09%. On page 9 is some information on the subject property. On page 10 is a little bit more information with regards to suite amenities. On page 11 is information on the suite sizes. One bedrooms range from 600 or 500 to 840 square feet. 2 bedrooms are about 885 to 942 square feet, and 3 bedrooms are 10,000 or sorry 1,010 square feet to 1,177 square feet. On page 12 and 13 are some pictures of the subject property. If you go back to my page 4, as per discussions with the applicant, I'm going to be adjusting the cap rate from 5% to 5.25%. With a revised value of $27,360,000. And also on page 4, the average monthly rent per unit of $1,521 is their actual rents factored back to the reference date. So when you look at the model rent and the expenses and the revised cap rate, they're all supported by the market. And I ask that you accept the my revised value of $27,360,000.
I thank you, Mr. Wong. Mr. Story, did you have questions?
Yes, I have some questions, Madam Chair, and just to narrow our issues, I do agree with the 5.25 cap in this instance, but it does it leaves us with the question of the rents, so ultimately the NOI. So I'll ask my questions on that basis only, if I may.
Mr. Story, sorry, you're not accepting the recommendation. I just want to make that clear then.
We're not accepting the quantum, we're accepting the 5.25, but ultimately, no, we're not accepting the recommendation. Thank you.
All right, I thank you.
Okay. May I proceed with my questions, Madam Chair?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so Mr. Wong, you'd mentioned that, well, I guess firstly, the main issue that I have, excuse me, with your brief is on page 11. And Madam Chair, if you and the panel will follow me, please. Page 11 includes a table of asking rents as of today. February of 2023. Now, Mr. Wong, would you agree with me that these are indeed asking rents and they are indeed almost 5 years post-reference?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, and then and would you agree with me that we're not to include or consider post-reference material for the purpose of these exercises? Is that a fair comment from your understanding?
I would say typically, but the information is there to give you information on the suite types and with regards to the rents that are in place. They are representative of the property, and the rents that have applied are lower than what has been stated.
Okay, and then but just to be very, very clear, a participant in the multifamily universe in Winnipeg would surely not have been aware of asking rents 5 years post-reference. Is that a fair comment?
Could you repeat the question?
Yes. At the reference date of April 1, 2018, a knowledgeable purchaser or vendor or any participant in the Winnipeg multifamily universe would not have been aware of what the asking rents would have been 5 years after the reference date. Is that a fair comment?
Yeah, I would say that's a fair comment, but also that the rents are they are there. They do exist, and they do exist for the current subject property.
Okay. All right. And then you'd mentioned that they were factored back. Now, my understanding from the explanation from the assessor last week, and tell me if I'm correct about this, the factor back method is typically you take the asking rents of the present day, and then you use what's called the RTB calculator, and you factor them back based on the permissible increases allowed by the RTB in each given year. Is that correct?
I believe so.
Okay, and the RTB increases are not, well, properties built after 2005 do not fall under the purview of the RTB increases. Isn't that correct?
I believe so.
Okay.
You know what? I'm not 100% sure.
Okay. Well, okay, they're properties built after 2005 are exempt from rent controls, but also, just to be very clear, the rent controls, for example, in 2003, the permissible increase was 0%. And in 2002, the permissible increase was also 0%. Are you aware of that?
No.
Okay. Madam Chair, I think I've made my point. I'm just going to suggest that these are post-reference rents and they not be considered, but those are my questions, and I thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Seelan?
Yes, RTB, can we just confirm what the acronym is for RTB?
The residential tenancy branch.
Thank you. Okay, so you made a recommendation, you've lowered your cap rate to 5.25. So let's just look at your table here. If we can just roll back here. So this is a multifamily dwelling. I noticed in all the multifamily dwellings, you have high rise and low rise. You have cap rates of 4 to 7.3%. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, and we made the adjustment to 5.25 because of what?
Discussions with the applicant and with regards to previous municipal board appeals.
Okay. Have you actually been out to this property? Have you seen this property at all?
I have not.
Has it been inspected of late by anyone?
I'm not sure.
Okay, if we turn to page 5, can you tell me what the comparables you have? Which comparables would be the closest to the subject property? As far as your opinion, which would be the closest ones, or which would be the number 1 or number 2 if you have two that are close?
Not sure if there is a best. I would think that they're all reasonably comparable because of basically the newness of the properties.
Okay. So when it comes to the parking at this location, I see the number of suites is 138 suites total, and I see the outdoor parking is for 120. Is that a detriment to this location that there's in this area that there's limited parking?
I haven't seen any support for the parking ratio being detriment to a property, and so yeah, I haven't seen any sort of market evidence to support that view.
Okay. The subject sale history, I noticed in February 11th, 2020, there's a considerations warrant value and sale price of $5,695,000. Excuse me, $695,000. Do we know anything about this subject sale?
I believe it was for the land value.
Well, this was land value.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely not for an improved the improved property as it stands.
Well, that's all my questions, Madam Chair. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Ms. Dickinson.
I have just two questions on your methodology. Firstly, are these all model driven with just an adjustment to the cap rate?
I believe so, yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Sorry, thank you. And then I had a question on your methodology that you explained respecting how you arrived at the rent. My question only is that your application of that type of methodology to sort of verify your rent, or is that a department methodology that's being used across the board?
It's how I can't say whether it's used all across the board, but it has been used in this instance, and in this instance, we feel that it's supported by the market as well, and so we feel that the approach that we've used is accurate and it's fair.
Okay, just to clarify for me, when you say we, do you mean that the department has accepted this as an accepted methodology for determining rents on new properties?
I can't say that. I can't say that for sure. I can say that the rent that we've used this approach for this property, and that we've sort of verified it against the market rents as well.
So you're using this approach, and other assessors are using this approach on apartments?
I can't say that for sure. I can say that it's used in this instance.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. That's all my questions.
Right. Mr. Wong, are you aware of, is this building offering any rental incentives?
I'm not aware.
Okay, and you had stated this is model driven?
The rents are not.
But your brief is?
Yes.
So you've used, I think, 2.4 vacancy on this property?
Yes.
Okay, which is model?
I believe so, yes.
Okay, so you're not aware if this property is experiencing any vacancy issues then?
I do not know.
Okay. And also just in regards to, sorry, just going down to your page 10. That discusses the suite amenities, and then I think further down, no, just the suite. Do you know if your comparables have, that you've used, do they have the same amenities?
I do not know.
Okay. And just in regards to the suite mix. So there's a total of 138 units, correct?
Yes.
So I'm gonna say pretty close to half, 48% are one bedrooms. Is that not unusual for a new build?
I don't believe so.
In your experience as an assessor, would you not say that two bedrooms are more desirable?
In my experience, I would say that it can be varied between 1, 2, and 3 bedrooms. There are some buildings that only have 2 bedrooms, and then there are some buildings exactly, or not exactly, but very similar to the subject property in terms of a mix between 1, 2, and 3 bedrooms.
Okay, well, I'm gonna ask this another way then. So this is a new building. Would you not say the breakdown of their suite mix is unusual for a new build?
I don't think so.
All right.
Not according to what I've seen.
Oh, all right. Thank you then. Mr. Story, if you'd like to proceed with your brief.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Okay, so here we are in Bridgewater Trails. Indeed, we do have a new building, and Madam Chair, you're absolutely correct. 48% one bedroom units would be, well, it would be, let's say, atypical for brand new builds. I think you're absolutely correct. Clearly, 2 bedroom units would be more desirable as they command a higher rent, as with 3 bedroom units, but there's a limited market. So typically in these new builds, we would see a higher propensity for 2 bedrooms. So you're absolutely right. We have buildings between 2 and 4 stories. There are 8 buildings in total. Now, one of those buildings is indeed what we'll call a club room or a tenant's lounge. The property is high quality. There's no issues there. I have not had the opportunity to inspect this property, but from our call it a desktop review, we do believe that the property is on the higher end of the scale of quality. It is a good new property in a good location, so no issues with condition there. Again, it was built in 2020. We have 138 suites with 63 one bedrooms, 24 2 bedroom suites, and 51 3 bedroom suites. The site size is approximately 6.7 acres. We have a photo on page 4. I think that aerial photo is probably during the development stage, but that's the most recent photo that we have from the aerial capture. So ultimately, I had pointed out, Madam Chair, that the assessment department's methodology here is flawed. We're clearly not permitted to use post-reference material, and we certainly shouldn't consider asking rents that are 5 years post-reference. So that leaves us with the question of how we ought to approach these properties and how we ought to determine the market rent. So what we've done on page 8 is we've taken a swath of new builds where the square footage per unit is known. We've listed the amenities, and we are suggesting to you that the property is amenity rich. So at the April 1, 2018 reference date, the rental year that is germane to our discussions would be 2017. So this is information from the 2017 rental year for good quality new properties. So what we've done, and because we want to be cautious that we're not overstating the potential rent on a per door basis, we've looked from a developer's perspective of the capacity to generate income from a per square foot perspective. And so what we've done here, just to sort of summarize quickly, and you'll see this for all of these supplementaries that we're using today. We haven't looked to proxy rents without adjustment. We've rather looked at the actual size of these units and then applied a rental rate per square foot that is commensurate with other amenity-rich new builds in good locations. So our one-bedroom units range from 516 to 644 square feet. So we've applied a fairly healthy rent of $1.75 per foot, and that does represent the fact that this property is on the higher end. So at April 1 of 2018, we're suggesting a rental rate of $1,015. Two bedrooms, based on economies of scale, as these are a fair bit larger, they range from 885 to 942 square feet. We're using $1.50 per foot, leading us to an average rent for the two bedrooms of $1,370 per month. The three bedrooms, again, these are much larger than the preceding units that we looked at, and those are between 1,010 square feet and 1,177. Now, I suppose based on economies of scale, that rental rate per square foot should go down, but we have been liberal in our application, so we're suggesting 1,640. Now, I did not in my workup include the parking revenue, so I will make that adjustment now. So we do recognize, and Mr. Seelan, I believe you'd asked about the parking and if that's a detriment not to have one-to-one parking, and the answer is, well, of course it is, because parking is a source of revenue. It also leads to higher degree of desirability. Some folks will certainly need to have a car, especially when they're renting on the higher end of the scale. So I think you're absolutely correct. We have used a rental rate for the parking for $100 per stall per month for indoor parking and $40 per outdoor. Now that's a little high at this reference date, and we'll use the same metrics for the next cycle. So I would suggest to you that's a little high here, but again, the resulting value I think is quite fair. So ultimately, our potential market gross rents are $2,165,805. That's the same as in my brief. Madam Chair, you'd mentioned that the vacancy at 2.4% is very low, and I agree that is very, very low. But without better data regarding the site-specific performance of this property, we would defer to the lower end of the citywide average in this case, and we've accepted 2.4%. Though that may very well creep up over time as there's more competition, and as quite frankly, we tend to see slightly higher vacancy at the higher end of the rental scale. So our effective gross rent when we subtract vacancy becomes $2,113,826. The parking that is absent in my brief I'm adding back now is $57,600. So again, that's $57,600 by way of parking. And the effective gross income then becomes $2,171,426. The expense ratio of 41.6%, that's about where we'd expect to see it, somewhere in that just a touch above 40% in the early short term. That makes sense. This property has a small pool, it has elevators, it's amenity rich, so we would expect to see a slightly elevated expense ratio. So in this case, 41.6 in the early years of this development makes sense. So ultimately, our NOI is calculated as $1,268,330. That figure once again is $1,268,330. Accepting the capitalization rate of 5.25 leads us to an indicated market value at the reference date of $24,158,659, which we then of course round to $24,159,000. So ultimately, our remaining point of contention here is on the rents. I will suggest that it's not appropriate to use post-reference material, of course. So we have done our best to look at this property on a per square foot basis. Looked at the different suites, recognized that they fall on the higher scale, on the quality scale, and we feel very comfortable with the value. Now, again, I have not had the opportunity to inspect the property personally, but on page 16, you can see some of the marketing photos. You can see that they are indeed, these are very good quality suites. It's a good quality build. It's in a good location. There's no issue whatsoever there. Page 19 shows you the breakdown of the square footage per unit. I note that even on the assessor's rental comp table, many of those units are larger, quite frankly. So we don't want to distort the potential rent per square foot by simply applying a per door application without adjustment, and we certainly aren't relying on any post-reference material. So again, with all that being said, we do respectfully submit that the value as of the April 1, 2020 for the 2021 supplementary based on a reference date of April 1, 2018, not exceed 24,159,000. And with that, I'm open to your questions, and I thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Wong, questions?
No questions.
Mr. Seelan?
I believe all my questions have been answered. Thank you so much, Madam Chair.
I just had a question around the rent, since that's at issue here.
Yes.
I'm looking at your table on page 8, and
Yep.
this methodology that you've used, is this a accepted, like, international assessing officers or whatever methodology for calculating rents on new buildings?
Oh, I'm not sure. I'm I'm not part of the IAAO, but
Maybe that's the wrong one. Just, is it like
right.
an accepted methodology?
Sure. Well, I believe so. I mean, it's when we speak to developers and when they're developing new properties, we do hear talk of the metric between the rent per square foot and certainly the rent per door. And we have, for these supplementaries, I think it's actually a more accurate way to determine these assets' capacity to generate income. And the reason for that, Ms. Davis, is because if we look at a comparable property where the suites are much larger, well, logic would dictate that you're going to get a higher rent on a larger suite. So if we look to what these comparable properties are generating, then I think it makes a lot of sense, and I think it's a more effective and efficient way to determine what a theoretical rent as of the reference date would have been. I mean, this property wasn't built, so there's some degree of fictionalizing the assessment in that we have to determine, well, what would this property have generated? So we look to comparables on a per square foot basis, and that eliminates any distortions that may occur by adjusting per suite size. So I think it's a more accurate way. It's certainly, from our perspective, it frankly, it makes more sense. So I don't know if that answers your question exactly, but that's sort of the rationale.
Yeah, it does. And then just to quickly look at the specific comparables you've chosen.
Yes.
I note that 2 of them are 2013, or you got 2 that are like in the 2013, 2014, and
yeah.
Then it goes all the way down to 2016, which isn't obviously as new built as the others. And the closest one vicinity wise appears to be Linden Woods. Like, you've got Transcona and Old Kildonan. Were
yep.
there additional ones in Bridgewater or that area? They seem to be building a lot in South End.
I don't believe that we had Bridgewater with a 2017 rental date, but that's a very good point. So if you look at the one on Linden Woods, and I should have mentioned this, but in Linden Woods, those 1 bedrooms are between 796 and 1,031 square feet. So they are indeed larger than our subject, but they're renting for $1.42 to $1.45 per foot. So we've applied $1.75, which I think I think it captures economies of scale very well. If you look at the let's see here, the 2 bedrooms, 143 to 150, and we're using now those are larger. We're using $1.50 per foot, and then we're on the, I would suggest we're on the high side for the 3 bedrooms at $16.50, or sorry, $16.40 per month. So I agree. Now in terms of the vintage, I would suggest to you that anything after, let's say, 2005 would be generally be considered comparable in terms of the quality. But yes, I think that all else being considered, I think the more recent the build, the better. But they are, again, they're new builds, they're high quality, they're in good locations, and they do have the types of amenities that we would expect to see in the current era. So I think they're good comps. Certainly there would be others that we could use, but these are this is the grouping that we've used for supplementaries, because they do capture a fairly wide swath of the city. So yes, that would be my response. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for that.
Thanks.
Mr. Story, I don't have any questions for you, but Mr. Wong, when you had mentioned that you were changing your cap rate because you had spoken with, did you say the owner of the building?
The applicant,
Okay, and so can you just give a little more explanation on that? Because you said it was due to previous. Anyway, can you just give some more explanation on that? I didn't quite.
it would be. I would it was sort of a negotiation at the municipal board level, and I'd actually prefer not to talk about it.
Okay. All right, I thank you. Do either of you have a wish for a summation on this property?
No, thank you.
Mr. Story?
Yes, just very quickly, Madam Chair. Thank you. Just not to put too fine a point on this, but I would ask the department's rents not be considered as they are predicated on post-reference material, and as we all know, that is not permitted. So I would ask that you defer to our rental rates or something that reflects the methodology that we've used here, as opposed to using rents at a starting point that are 5 years post-reference. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So we will move on again to 186 Appleford Gate. This is roll year 2023, and Mr. Wong, whenever you are ready.
Okay, the subject property is 186 Appleford Gate. The file number is 22-4840. The roll number is 030-929-85945. The roll year is 2023, and the assessed value is 31,785,000. This is a residential apartment that's 2 to 4 stories high. It was built in 2020 to 2021, and it has 138 suites with 44 indoor parking stalls and 180 outdoor parking stalls. On page 3 is a picture of the subject property with its location. On page 4 is our income valuation summary. We use average rents of $1,619 for their annual monthly, or their average monthly rent. The models estimated their net operating income to be $1,493,000, capped at 4.7%. The estimated market value is $31,785,000. On page 5 are some rent comparables that show that the rents that we've applied are in line with what's in the market. On the bottom of page 5 are some expense comparables ranging from 33 to 42%, supporting this supports the model's cap rate, the model's expense ratio of 41.87%. On page 6 is information on how we derived our cap rates. On page 7 are some cap rate sales that range from 3.6 to 5.74%. See, the most comparable properties to the subject property would be 2390 McPhillips and 1745 Henderson, which capped at 4.79% and 4.28%. This supports the model's 4.7% that's been applied to the subject property. The remainder of my information is the same as for the 2021 year roll. So once again, and going back to my page 4, the income was overridden to their actual rents, factored back using RTB rates. So the average monthly rent per unit is overridden. But even though it is overridden, the monthly rents are supported by the market, as are the model expenses and cap rate. So the model parameters are supported by the market, and I ask that you maintain the assessed value at $31,785,000.
Thank you. Mr. Story, questions?
I have some questions, Madam Chair, and I've just sent in a quick rebuttal document because we are going to be talking about this RTB guideline. So I just want to be sure that the panel is able to see it, but that's been sent to the secretary. Okay, so Mr. Wong, once again, the rents that are used here are, the starting point is post-reference, correct?
The starting point is post-reference.
Okay. And then again, we've discussed the RTB calculator, but would you agree with me that the guideline increase by the RTB for 2023 and 2022 are both 0%, and that the increase that was permissible under the RTB guideline for 2021 is only 1.6%? Are you aware of that?
No.
Okay. And would you agree with me that properties built after the year 2005 are in fact exempt from the RTB guideline?
I am not 100% sure.
Okay. All right. And then in terms of, let's go to page 5. And I just, Madam Chair, if I can just get you on the board to look on the subject under that column where it says gross floor area per unit. The number the assessor is using there is 1,470. Now, Mr. Wong, in the previous document, that same number was 961 square feet. So what is giving rise to that disparity of what you're suggesting is 500 square feet per unit?
I'm not sure what the difference is, but we take the gross floor. We get that calculation just by taking the gross floor area of the building divided by the number of units.
Okay, so would you be including then the let's call it the event space, like the club room and the fitness center, and that type of thing, like the non-rental areas, the amenity space is then being packaged into that number? Is that how that is becoming inflated?
I'm not sure.
Okay, but you would agree with me though that the previous document showed 961 and now we're showing 1470, so clearly something is amiss, correct?
They should be the same.
Right. Okay. And then I believe Mr. Seelan had mentioned the brokers tables in the previous cycle, and I just want to spend a moment on that. So if you look at your page 6, Mr. Wong, under the multifamily heading, we can see quite clearly that every broker is showing us that low-rise buildings, well, actually, they're showing low-rise A as 5.25 as per CBRE. Colliers is showing us 5 to 6. Effectively, nobody is showing us a sub 5 cap from the broker's side in your evidence. Is that correct?
I believe that to be correct.
Okay. And then if we look at the...
I believe that to be correct, but I also believe that our cap rates are correct as well, considering that when I look at the appraisal reports that I see, they're actually very consistent with the cap rates that the model is estimated, and with the sales that have been shown on page 7. So even though the other, like Colliers and CBRE, don't necessarily state something that is 4%, we definitely see 4% cap rates in our analysis. And we also see 4% more often than not in appraisal reports. So I feel that the cap rates that we've used are I guess, supported by sales and supported by the sales in other appraisals that I've seen.
Okay, there's nothing in evidence supporting that. And in terms of your actual cap rate evidence, there are no calculations for the panel to review or the taxpayer to review. Is that a fair comment?
We have not provided the stabilizations, but these properties have been stabilized in a similar manner, and those are the cap rates that we've calculated.
Okay, and just to stay on this cap rate table, so I'm sorry, you're suggesting that the broker's cap rates are not indicative? Is that your perspective?
The broker's cap rates show that we are like our cap rate range is in line, maybe a little bit lower, but it is similar to the brokers.
Okay, so what's interesting to me here, though, is that if we track and this is something that our office does, we track the compression cycle over cycle. Now, would you agree with me that the cap rate compression in the multifamily universe is typically between 0 and 25 basis points between April 1 of 2018 and April 1 of 2021, mathematically?
I'm not sure.
Well, if you just look at the table of what's being reported in Q1 of 21 and Q1 of 2018, the highest amount of, the largest amount of compression is 25 basis points or a quarter point, and the lowest is 0. So, but your cap rates are not consistent with that, are they?
I'm not sure.
Okay, and just to be very clear, let's just, I suppose we can deal with this this once. Madam Chair, I'll just ask the question once here on 2390 because it has come up a number of times in the 23-24 cycle. But Mr. Wong, can we agree that this property was purchased where it would appear that the purchaser, a national real estate investment trust, purchased it with the intention to increase those rents upon turnover? Is that a fair comment from your understanding?
I'm not sure. All I know is that our cap rate was calculated based off of their actual income statements, and the property was fairly stable. And so we've stabilized their NOI in a similar manner, and it calculated out to be a 4.79% cap rate using their actual income and expenses.
Okay, but the rents, to be fair, at the time were indeed below CMHC rents, so they would have been below market at the time, correct?
I'm not sure. If you want to present information to that regard, you can.
Okay, but you've certainly seen that before, and so you are aware that those rents were raised on turnover, correct?
I'm not sure.
Okay, and would you agree with me, just as a mathematical question, if all of the inputs in the statement remained the same and the rents went up, then the cap rate that you've calculated would be a fair bit higher, would it not? Just mathematically.
Mathematically, that would be the case.
Okay.
With regards to the 4.79 that we've calculated, it was based off of their actual income and expense information 3 years prior to the sale, and so that's how we calculated it.
And you mentioned appraisal theory and valuation theory. Would you agree with me that the principle of anticipation forms a large part of the capitalization rate?
I'm not sure. With regards to the cap rates, with regards to, yeah, you know what? I'm not sure about that.
Okay, Madam Chair, those are my questions. I'll just ask those questions regarding McPhillips carry forward. You've all heard our positions on that a number of times. Those are my questions. Thank you, Mr. Wong.
Thank you. Mr. Seelan?
Yes, if we go back to that page 7 here, the capitalization rate evidence, I believe you mentioned, and I think it states here that 2390 McPhillips and 1745 Henderson Highway were your two closest to the subject property as far as comparability. Would that be correct?
Yeah, I would say that they were the most supportive.
Okay. with respect to the Henderson Highway property, it's built in 1974. Effective age is 1994. So it's a fairly old property. Have you seen this property? Have you inspected it at all yourself?
I have not inspected the property.
Okay. Based on this listing here, with the exception of 2390 McPhillips, which has a year built of 2015 and effective age of 2015, do you have any newer comparables that would be, I'll say, closer to your to the subject property as far as the year 2020, 2021?
I don't believe so.
Okay, so now I look at your table on page 6 here, and it has a range of 4.8 to 5.60 for this for properties that are similar to that range group. And right now this is at 4.7, so this is really below the 20th percentile. This property, what for this property currently here. So it sort of falls out of a little bit of the range there. Why would you, or why would the model pick a 4.7 for this property in your estimation?
I'm assuming it's just I don't know for sure, but I would say it's primarily the year built.
Okay. That's all my questions, Madam Chair. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Davidson?
I had a few additional questions on the cap rate, not to beat it to death. In terms of the page that Mr. Seelan was referring to with the comms.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, I can't find the number, but we know which one it is.
It's page 7.
Yeah, in addition, he had indicated and talked to us about the year built, but I'm also looking at the number of suites, with the exception of Henderson Highway. I mean, there's not a lot of suites in these buildings, and also I'm just wondering, are they of the same level of amenities like we saw in the subject property? Not only is it new, and not only does it have 138 suites, but it's a very nice building with amenities. So in terms of comparability, are they comparable in that manner as well? Like story?
I would say in terms of comparability, I would say the subject property is superior to these. So it could be viewed as the subject property having a lower cap rate than what 2390 Henderson, or sorry, 2390 McPhillips and 1745 Henderson. They've capped out at 4.79 and 4.28%. You could view it as the subject property as having a lower cap rate than that, because of its superiority.
Okay, thank you, that's helpful. And then I just had a question on the other property. You had lowered the cap, or not the same property, the other assessment year to 5.25, and this one's at 4.7, and you indicated 4.7 came mathematically out of your income and expense analysis. So it's a straight mathematical calculation.
The 4.7% for this property?
Yeah.
That's the model cap rate.
Oh, okay. I thought you said it was calculated based on, I'm sorry, I misunderstood that. So this is the model. So I'm just wondering, like, I know that the cap rate isn't necessarily going to be the same from one assessment cycle to the next, but you indicated you adjusted this same property in the previous assessment cycle based on municipal board decisions and on discussion with the applicant. So in terms of a tracking of cap rates kind of over time, like you didn't adjust the 4.7. So I'm just wondering why one and not the other, not suggesting they should be the same, but why?
Yeah, I would say it's mostly because we've gone through the 2020 municipal board appeal process, and the assessment cycle. It deals with different information. We feel that the 2023 cycle, you can see that the information in front of you supports, substantiates the model's cap rates that are in the 4% range, and so the primary difference is that the information is different, I would say. The data is different.
So not to go back, but just really quickly, when you came up with the 5% in the model on the this same property in the previous cycle, was it not calculated the same way you arrived at the 4.7 this cycle, but you discussed it, negotiated it?
Yeah, it could be it could be a negotiated thing.
Okay, all right. Then my other quick question is back to the methodology you've used on rents, just quickly. Did you ever use that methodology in previous cycles, or is this a first time use in this this assessment cycle?
I think we have used it potentially. Like I said, I can't speak for everybody and all properties, but it has been. I think it has been used in the previous cycle. I'm not sure. I'm not sure when it was started, but all I can say is that for these properties, they were used.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. That's all my questions.
Thank you. And my questions have been asked and answered. And I believe, Mr. Story, you said you had rebuttal on this property?
Yes, I had sent it in.
It's distributed.
Fantastic.
Is it
So
up there?
we have to go out and then.
You might have to just refresh it, but it's under item 2. Under item 2, rebuttal. Rebuttal.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Seelan, you have the rebuttal?
Oh, you're muted.
You're muted.
Yeah, thank you. I'm just looking for it right now.
Yeah, you may have to refresh yours as well to find it.
Okay, let me just look and see, because I thought I had refreshed it.
Okay.
So just bear with me. I apologize, everyone. Yes, I do. Thank you so much. Appreciate your patience.
No worries. Mr. Story, if you would proceed.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So we have effectively, well, 3 issues here. The first being that we're not to include post-reference material. Obviously, the concept of the reference year or reference date is to benchmark what would have been known to market participants as of the reference date. So in this case, April 1, 2018 or April 1, 2021. Now, further to that, I made mention to this a number of times. Apartment buildings that are constructed after the year 2005 are exempt from rent controls. And the document that I've sent in here, just to further show you why the methodology employed by the department for these supplementaries is inappropriate, is because despite the fact that we're starting with a post-reference asking rent, that's important too. There may be discounts or incentives, as Madam Chair, as you mentioned. But further to that, if you look at the rent increase guideline, if we go to 23, you can see that the increase was 0%. So effectively, if the assessor is indeed factoring back, as they said, they would be factoring back 2023 by 0%. Similarly, they'd be factoring back 2022 by 0%. And 2021 would be factored back by only 1.6%. So this methodology is inappropriate for a number of reasons, but I want to show you this increase guideline table just to support the comments that I've been making, that I will continue to make for I believe for the balance of this docket. So I just wanted the panel to be aware of our position. So I'll leave it there. But again, we do believe that the inclusion of post-reference rents as a starting point is inappropriate, quite frankly. And this just further supports that position. So I thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Wong, did you have any questions?
No, just that I guess the use of factoring back their current rents by 0%, 1.6%. I mean, in the end, we're trying to accurately estimate what the its potential revenue is, and I think this is a accurate and fair representation of it.
Thank you. Mr. Seelan, questions?
No questions, Madam Chair. Thank you so much.
No questions, thank you.
I also have no questions. Do either of you have a wish for a summation of this property?
No, thank you.
Madam Chair, did I give you my my presentation here? I'm sorry.
Oh,
I think I need to just run through mine quickly. Okay.
oh my goodness, I'm sorry, and that should have
Nope.
been.
Nope, not a problem. I will be expedient as we've sort of discussed this property a fair bit here. So ultimately, we've used, if you followed me, folks, to page 8, we have an updated table of our comparables, our rent comparables. So it's the same methodology. The assessor has mentioned that they believe it's appropriate to use guidelines. We would suggest to you it's a little more work, but it's more accurate to use what we'll call comparable or proxy rents that are germane to our reference date. So we have to be very, very sure that for the purpose of this exercise that we're looking to what would have been known to market participants as of the reference date. So we have effectively the same table with some new additions, and this is based on a rental year of 2020. And we have, as you would expect to see, we've seen some rent escalation in our table. So again, those suites, I'm not sure why the assessment department is suggesting that they're 1,400-foot suites. They're not. They are. That 996 looks to be about right. I think it actually may be based on the club room. I noticed too in the assessor's brief the difference between 7 or 8 buildings. So the club room is likely what's causing that disparity. But you're not renting the club room, you're renting your suite. So for the 1-bedroom unit, we're using $2 per square foot. That is indeed an escalation over the previous cycle. For the 2-bedroom, we're using $175, and for the 3-bedroom, we're using $175. Now, I do note that the 3-bedroom rents are $1,914 per door. That is quite high, but that is again commensurate with the fact that this is a high quality property. The 2-bedroom, $1,599, so just a touch below $1,600 a month, and the 1-bedroom units, again, they're on the smaller side, but based on $2 a foot, they come to $1,160. I've included the parking in my updated calculation, so I'll just read that out to you. Again, we've used 57,600. The 4.2 vacancy is accepted, I should say. Citywide vacancy at the reference date is 3.8%. 4.2 is reasonable as we are on the higher end of the rental scale. So that's accepted. And the property has not been operating for a number of years. So without better information, we think that 4.2 is reasonable. So again, using our effective gross rent of $2,403,145, and then adding that parking value of $57,600 per year, that gives us an effective gross income of $2,467,45. We have accepted that rounded expense ratio of 41.9%. Though that may be low as time marches on. In the short term, that appears to be reasonable. Though we do recognize that there are a great deal of amenities, and typically when properties rent on the higher end of the register, it costs a little more to maintain, to subtend that income stream, I should say. So ultimately, our NOI comes to $1,430,431. And I am adjusting my cap rate in this instance to 5%. So with that adjustment, our new value is calculated at $28,608,620. So that value rounded again is $28,609,000. Now I've mentioned cap rate compression, and Ms. Davison, you had a very good question about the why would the cap rate be 5.25 in the previous cycle and 4.7 here? And that's a good question, because that would indicate cap rate compression of 55 basis points, which we do not see in the market. We are seeing compression between 0 and 25 basis points. In our submission, we do note we have a standalone cap rate submission, but I know you've all seen and heard all about it throughout the course of the regular 2023-2024 cycle. But ultimately, where we are seeing compression is on the higher quality builds, and we do note that there's a great deal of new supply saturating our market. So based on the brokers, based on our own research into the Winnipeg multifamily universe, we believe that a cap rate compression level of a quarter point or 25 basis points is appropriate. So in this instance, I am adjusting my cap rate from 5.25 to 5%. Though we may, if we were to look at this property from a different angle, we might say, well, you know, the suite mix may not be ideal, and the parking situation may be being below 1-to-1 may be an issue. However, we do feel comfortable at a 5% cap rate. So ultimately, once again, we do respectfully submit that the value at the reference date of April 1, 2021, not exceed $28,609,000. And with that, I'm happy to take your questions, and I thank you.
Mr. Wong, questions?
No questions.
Mr. Sealer?
No questions, Madam Chair. Thank you so much.
Ms. Davis?
I have no questions either, thank you.
I also have no questions. Did either party have a wish for a summation?
No, thank you.
Just once again, Madam Chair, we would just ask that the post-reference rental rates not be considered, and that the cap rate compression cycle over cycle be adjusted so that it is commensurate with the actual market. And I thank you.
Thank you both. And at this time, we're just going to take a 5-minute break. And I would like to call this meeting back to order. And we are going to proceed to our next property at 1976 St. Mary's Road. Mr. Wong, whenever you're ready to proceed.
The subject property is 1976 St. Mary's Road. The file number is 22-4833. The roll number is 080-812-26220. The roll year is 2021, and the assessed value is $11,268,000. This is a residential apartment that's 4 stories high. It was built in 2020, and it has 45 suites with 31 indoor parking stalls and 38 outdoor parking stalls. On page 3 is a picture of the subject property with its location. It's on St. Mary's Road in between the St. Vital Shopping Center and the Perimeter Highway. On page 4 is our income valuation summary. We use average rents of $1,754. Once again, these are based off of their actual rents factor back. The resulting in a net operating income of $563,000. The cap rate is 5%, but I'm revising my value based off of a 5.25% cap rate. The revised value is $10,731,000. And on page 5 are our rent comparables, showing that the rents that we've applied are in line with what's in the market. On the bottom of page 5, are some expense comparables that range from 32 to 42%. It supports the model's expense ratio at 38.96%. On page 6 and 7 is information on how we derived our cap rates and some cap rate sales. On page 9 is some information on the subject property. This is the, I guess, phase 1 of a 7-phase development. Page 10 and 11 is information on the suite layouts. As you can see, they almost all the layouts have waiting lists except for one. On page 12 is some more information on the suite features and the building amenities. So it is being advertised as a luxury suites and with quartz countertops and double undermount stainless steel sinks. And on the building amenities, they do have an on-site car wash. And on page 13 are some interior pictures. In summary, the rents that we've applied have been overridden based off of their actual rents, and the expenses and cap rate, or the expenses are supported by the market, and the cap rate has been adjusted. But the rent and the expenses are supported by the market, and the cap rate is agreed upon at 5.25%. So I ask that you accept the revised value of $10,731,000.
Are you finished, Mr. Wong?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Story, I'm just going to ask you right off, are you willing to accept Mr. Wong's revised numbers? Oh, you're muted.
Sorry about that. We accept the cap rate of 5.25, but that leaves us with the issue of the NOI. So ultimately, no. But our issues are now narrowed to matters related to the gross potential rent only.
All right, I thank you. Did you have questions?
Well, I guess just to clarify, Mr. Wong, once again, these rents that are used as the basis for the gross potential rent are indeed asking rents, and they are indeed 5 years post-reference, correct?
They are the asking rents, and they are post-reference.
Okay. Madam Chair, those are my questions. And just, I looked this decision up. I thought it'd be germane to our discussions here today. I've sent it in as rebuttal. It is what's known as the Broadway Square decision. It's from the Court of Appeal. So I can go through it, but effectively it is the decision that gives us some guidance from the courts as to how we ought to treat precisely this type of situation where we ought not to include post-reference events. In this case, these rents. So I've submitted that there, and I'll leave it with you, and I think I'll leave my comments there. Thank you.
And thank you. Mr. Seelan, did you have any questions?
Yes, I just wanted to clarify your recommendation. Was it 10,531,000?
10,731,000.
731. Thank you. That's all my questions presently, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Ms. Davidson?
I have no questions, thank you.
Mr. Wong, again, this is model driven.
Yeah, except for the rents.
Right. I have no further questions. Mr. Story, if you would like to proceed.
Thank you very much. Okay, so sorry, let me just pull up the wrong year here. Okay, there we are. All right, so 1976 St. Mary's Road. The property was built in 2020. It does, just to reference back to our previous file, it does have a more typical suite mix with 9 one-bedroom units, 24 two-bedroom units, and 12 three-bedroom units. It is in Norman Park. It's north of Ward on the west side of, oh, sorry, we have the wrong west side of Pembina. No, that's not correct. It is indeed in Norman Park in St. Patel. Okay, so it has a gross floor area of 68,500 square feet. We've gone over the suite mix, and if you look at my page 4, you can see that it is on a very irregular parcel. I don't know that the assessor has that in his evidence, but it is on this very long, thin parcel off of St. Mary's Road. The red teardrop on page 4 is where our subject is presently built, and there is some plan for expansion to be certain, but it is we'll call it an atypical parcel of land. We've not factored that in, but I would like to point it out just so you're aware. Okay, so ultimately, we've used the same methodology of looking to the actual units. In this case, the one-bedroom units are between 496 and 672 square feet. They have been applied a rent of $2 per foot. The two bedrooms range from $924 to $1,108. We've applied $1.75 per foot. The three bedrooms range between $1,176 and $1,304. And again, we've applied $1.75, though that may be a touch on the high side based on the fact that economies of scale presumably would indicate a lower rent per square foot based on the two bedrooms. But again, we've applied we'll call it a liberal application of the rents so as to not undercount them. And ultimately this makes sense. We can see the one bedrooms that are between 496 and 672. We're suggesting that at April 1, 2018, would typically rent for $1,022 based on comparables in the market. A two bedroom ranging from $924 to $1,108, we're estimating $1,524, and a three bedroom would be on the very high side at $1,860. Now this does not include parking. I've included I don't have it in my brief. I apologize in my haste. I neglected to include it, but I have, we'll make that adjustment now. Parking we've included now at $55,400. That's assuming full occupancy, but that's fine. We're comfortable with the resulting effective gross income, which then becomes $851,323. So again, our effective gross rent, once we factor the 2.6 vacancy, which of course is low, becomes $795,883. We then add the parking of $55,400, giving us an effective gross income of $851,323. We have not disputed that expense ratio of 39%. It's slightly on the low side, but it is, well, we'll say it's within range, but it is on the lower end of the range from our knowledge of the market. But it is accepted, barring any history of this property and a knowledge of their expenses that may creep up as time marches on. Our NOI then becomes $519,648, which we capitalize with 5.25, leading us to an indicated market value of $9,898,048. That value once again is $9,898,000 rounded. The balance of my brief includes some interior these are staged marketing photos. Again, we've applied the higher rents. They do rent on the higher end of the scale. No issues with quality here. I have not had the opportunity to inspect these, but in terms of quality, we have deferred to the very high end in our assessment of this property. So quality is certainly not an issue. We've captured the higher rents in our assessment, and again, we do respectively submit the value not exceed $9,898,000 for the 2021 cycle at a reference date of April 1, 2018. And with that, I thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Wong, questions?
Yeah, on page 8.
Yep.
Like when I divide the rent, say for the one bedroom.
Yep.
By $2 a square foot. Or Actually, sorry, I guess that one, it works out to an average size of 511 square feet.
Times $2 is 1,022. Right?
Yeah. So that falls within that range of 496 and 672, right?
Yeah, that's how that's calculated. That's right.
But when I for the 2 bedrooms, when I divide it 1524 by 175,
yeah,
I get 870. Is that correct?
You get 870. Well,
Yeah.
okay, hold on. So if we use, let's just do the math here. So 1108 plus 924. Okay. Yeah, sorry. That is, oh, okay. It's based on, yeah, $1.75 multiplied by the average of 924 and 1108.
Is it working out?
Yeah, it's working out on my side. So we have 24 2 bedrooms, and we're using, oh, I'm sorry, we're using $1.50. No, that's the issue. It's $1.50. That's where we get the 1524. I'm sorry. Yep.
Oh.
That's right.
Okay,
it's $1.50. Yep. And so that makes sense. And that's why it is. And again, this is for 2018. So we'll see some escalation in 2021 as a reference date, but you're correct. There's an error in the brief.
Oh,
It should be $1.
okay. It's just the numbers weren't quite lining up.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Thanks for pointing that out. And that's going to be the same for the 3 bedroom as well. So yeah, no, you're right. It's so those numbers, I'm sure I should point this out. These would be this looks like the table from the previous or from the subsequent cycle. So it should be 175 for the smaller units and then 150 for the larger units. That makes sense. And that's because it is the April 1, 2018 reference date. Yes, Mr. Wong, you are correct. But ultimately, the rent per month per unit is the right calculation. The error is just in the rent per square foot column, but the calculation is correct. Yeah.
Okay, that's all my questions.
Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Seelan?
I just had a question. This site, I believe, is going to have some further expansion to it. Is that going to occur on the same site that there's going to be other phases of development, or
yes, that's my understanding. Yeah, and if you look at the it is sort of like we'll call a sort of a shotgun parcel, where it's a very long and narrow parcel of land. My understanding is that they'll build them sort of, well, effectively the only place you can build them is behind the existing one. So yeah, that's my understanding. I think the assessor is correct in saying that I think there are plans for 7 phases at this stage. I believe that to be true, but ultimately we're just looking at the asset as it stands now. But yes, my understanding is that they do have plans to further develop the site.
Okay. What was the ratio of parking to actual suite mix?
They have a very good parking mix here, and so it's they have 45 suites and they have 69 stalls, 31 indoor, 38 outdoor, and we've captured that in the I didn't have it in my original brief, but I've included 55,400, presuming that they are all that all stalls are leased. So no issue with the parking ratio on this one.
Thanks very much. That's all my questions, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Davidson.
I have no questions, thank you.
I also have no questions. Does Mr. Story, did you want to speak to your rebuttal?
Sure. Just very quickly, Madam Chair. I've included a decision. No, I don't mean to sort of beat this to death here, but we feel very strongly that post-reference material ought not to be included. So the leading decision which I'm aware is the Broadway Square decision. And it does speak to a situation that's very similar to ours, where at the reference date, I believe they use the term fictionalized. The property was not built, but what basically our exercise today is to look at the as you all know, the present built asset, so as it stands physically, based on the economic conditions at the reference date. So what would have been known to all participants in the market as of the reference date. So in our for our purposes today, the reference date will either be obviously April 1 of 2018 or April 1 of 2021. And this decision does suggest that we ought not to use information subsequent to the reference year or reference date in determining an appropriate value of our subject properties. This is the crux of our issue today for all of the properties with regard to rent. We've heard the assessor say that they've used what they're calling the factor back method, but that would be directly opposed to the methodology that it's accepted for us in terms of our exercise. So I have submitted that decision for you. I'm sure many of you are aware of it, but I just want to put that on the record and to suggest that we are opposed to using any post-reference material in order to develop the assessments for these properties for either cycle. So I will leave my comments there, but I wanted to make sure that this document was submitted into evidence for our purposes today.
Thank you. Mr. Wong, did you have any questions regarding this rebuttal?
Questions?
Mr. Seela?
No questions, Madam Chair. Thank you.
And Ms. Davis?
No questions, thank you.
I also have no questions. Does either party wish for a summation?
I guess I just wanted to point out that I guess with the previous property and this property, there seems to be a mix of 1, 2, and 3 bedrooms. So I just wanted to point that out, as well as maybe the subsequent properties where they will have a mix of 1, 2, and 3 bedrooms. So because I guess I kind of got the impression that they thought this was out of the ordinary, but it's I don't know. In my view, it's fairly normal.
All right, thank you, Mr. Story.
Yes, just very quickly, the again, as you know, at this stage, we're very much opposed to the inclusion of any post-reference material to create these assessments, and we would request that the assessor's NOI not be considered on that basis. And I thank you.
Thank you both. We will now proceed to 1976 St. Mary's Road, roll year 2023. Mr. Warren, whenever you are ready to proceed.
Okay. The subject property is 1976 St. Mary's Road. The file number is 22-4834. The roll number is 080-812-26220. The roll year is 2023, and the assessed value is $14,151,000. This is a residential apartment. It's 4 stories high. It was built in 2020, and it has 45 suites with 31 indoor and 38 outdoor parking stalls. On page 3 is a picture of the subject property with its location. On page 4 is our income valuation summary. We use average rents of $1,868, and their estimated NOI is $594,000, capped at 4.2%. The estimated value is $14,151,000. On page 5 are some rent comparables showing that the rents we've used are in line with what's in the market. And on the bottom of page 5 are some expense comparables that range from 33 to 42%. This supports the model's expense ratio at 39%. On page 6 is information on how we derived our cap rates. And on page 7 are some cap rate sales. See on the bottom part, just below the chart, probably the best cap rate comparables are McPhillips and Henderson, and which are 4.79 and 4.29%, and the model is at 4.2%. I'd like to, I'm recommending a revised cap rate of 4.5%, which falls in between McPhillips and Henderson. So using a 4.5% cap rate, the value is $13,208,000. And that is my revised value. The remainder of the brief is the same as with the previous roll year assessment cycle. So the rents are in line with their actuals and are supported by the market, and the expenses that we've used are supported by the market as well, as well as the revised cap rate. So I ask that you accept the revised value of $13,208,000.
I thank you, Mr. Wong. Mr. Story?
Yes, I have
Would you accept Mr. Wong's recommendation?
No, thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to proceed.
All right.
Okay, Mr. Wong. All right. So just to be clear, those average monthly rents that you're suggesting, those are indeed based on that factor back methodology once again, and you're using the RTB calculator, and we've gone over that. Is that fair? Is that how that average monthly rent per unit is being generated?
Yes, it's based off of their actual rents factor back.
Okay, so what are you applying for a 1-bedroom rent, for example?
I don't have the actual rents calculated.
Okay, so you don't.
Calculation.
So you don't know what you're suggesting a 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, or 3-bedroom rent would be in this property. Is that fair?
It's a blended rent.
Okay, but just specifically, you couldn't tell me what the department is suggesting a 2-bedroom rent ought to be for this property as of April 1, 2021, correct?
No, it's a blended rent.
Okay, and then in terms of this cap rate, that's modeled and you've now adjusted it to 4.5, but can we agree that you're suggesting a 75 basis point compression rate cycle over cycle, which is not supported by your evidence or brokers or the market? Is that a fair comment?
Well, I'm not sure if the 5.25 in the previous cycle is that's a negotiated rate, and so I'm not sure if you can compare them. They're different. The current rate is based off of the current information.
Right, but in the previous cycle, weren't the brokers suggesting? You said that 5.25 was not supported, but aren't the brokers suggesting, well, a minimum 5.5 for a low-rise A in the previous cycle? So wouldn't that 5.25 actually be a little bit low based on what we're seeing?
Well, I'm not really sure what how their calculations are made, but with regards to the cap rate that we have here, it is supported by the cap rates on page 7, and once again, it is supported by what I've seen in appraisals, which the majority of the cap rates are below 5%.
Okay, but you've mentioned this a few times, but you haven't submitted any appraisals. That's simply hearsay at this stage, correct?
No, I haven't submitted any appraisals. I'm just giving you my experience with regards to cap rates being below 5% in most of the appraisals that I've seen.
Okay, and then just as a secondary check, the initial value that came out was $315,000 per door. Now, I think we can both agree that would be very, very high for assessment purposes, would it not?
It would be high. It is on the higher end of the scale. There are sales that support that of, I would say, inferior properties. I would say this particular subject property is probably superior to most. So considering that there are some that sell for $325,000, the $315,000 is actually not unreasonable. But
just so I'm clear, yeah, you're suggesting that you have evidence of sales equating to $325,000 per door as of this reference date for inferior properties?
Yes.
Okay, but again, nothing in evidence, correct?
No.
Okay, and we've talked about McPhillips. So, Madam Chair, I'll ask my comments carry forward. But so I did some research on this property on Henderson. That was a share sale, was it not?
Yes.
And that was submitted by a different firm in their evidence without any calculation. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, and in that same submission from that other firm, they suggested that well, they submitted to you cap rates ranging from 5. Well, they suggested the 2390 McPhillips was a 5, all the way up to a 7.28%. Is that correct?
I'm not sure.
Oh, did you review that submission? And did you review this sale to ensure that it was accurate? Is it simply hearsay submitted by a different applicant?
I believe it is a accurate sale, and when we calculate the repair and maintenance, or the when we stabilize the net operating income, it comes out to 4.28%. And as it turns out, that's what I mean. The information that you're speaking to, they indicated cap rate of 4.29%. But the thing is that we don't have any of the information that they use to calculate that, but we do have the information used to calculate our 4.28%. And so that's how that was calculated.
Okay, was that a multi-role sale?
I'm not sure.
Okay. Madam Chair, those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Seelan.
Yes, if we turn to page 5, can you tell me which property is the closest comparable to the subject property?
I'm not sure. I would say they're all reasonably comparable. They're all on the higher end of the rental spectrum, the rental range, and but they're all, I would say, they're comparable based off comparable. One was built in 2019, 2 was built in 2018, and then 3 was built in 2017. So I just feel that they're all reasonably comparable.
Now, these comparables, they're all in different parts of the city. Is that, would that be true, that statement?
Yes.
Awesome. That's all my questions, Madam Chair. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Davidson.
Yes, I just have a follow-up question on your cap rate. I think I heard you indicate that you adjusted your cap to 4.5 to be sort of midpoint on 2390 McPhillips and 1745 Henderson, between the 4.28 and the 4.79.
Yes.
Okay, I'm just I'm sort of struggling with the cap rates because like I'm looking at Applegate, which we just reviewed, and you have a 4.7, and now we're at a 4.5. And you picked the lowest of Henderson, which has 110 suites, and our subject has 45. And then you selected McPhillips at 2390 for 4.79. Yet, like, you just took these particular ones midpoint, like you didn't do, say, maybe a more complicated, well, it wouldn't be that complicated, but sort of statistical look, bringing the other ones into play. I'm just wondering why you only selected 2 and went with the midpoint.
Yeah, like there actually aren't that many sales to sort of perfectly use for all the properties that we have in appeal. If we were to try to find a fairly exact comparable, it probably wouldn't exist. So how I like to look at it is that when you see the cap rates from 17 for 2390 McPhillips and Henderson, I just feel that it substantiates the rates that we've applied, and I feel that it is reasonable. And so yeah, like I said, to try to find like in this particular case, this property has 45 units, and the comparables have 90 and 110 units. The previous property had 135 units, and like that is sort of similar to the 90 units and the 110 units. So just say the difference between 90 or 100 and 130 units, it's kind of difficult for us to find cap rate sales that will be, I guess, fully comparable. But if you look at the sales that we have available, it substantiates the cap rates that we've used.
Yeah, I do understand that, you know, you're limited by the actual, you know, properties and you have to obviously use judgment, but it's not very much of a difference. But why 4.7 on Applegate when it's the same age and 4.5 on this? Like, I know it's almost the same.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Even to find like a new cap rate sales that would substantiate a 0.2%, you know, to be good enough to sort of to say that this building is 0.2 different, it'd be kind of fairly difficult to find cap rate sales to support that. But if you look at the cap rate sales that we have and what the model has applied, I believe what the model has applied is sort of supported, is in definitely within that range. And even when you look at the applicants' cap rate sales, there aren't that many. And so to find fairly exact comparables, it probably would be either very difficult or maybe impossible. So we do the best we can with the sales information that we have.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
So, Mr. Wong, I just have a quick question about vacancy, just because looking at this property and the previous property, the vacancy in the model is changing on every property, and I'm just wondering if you can speak to that. It's increasing, like when it first like St. Mary's, the vacancy was at 2.6 for 2021, and now it's at 3.2. So I'm just wondering, is there something within the model that is accounting for that this is a new apartment building and they're going to be experiencing vacancy as they start up? Is that taken into consideration, or?
No, I think generally speaking, the vacancy from 2021 to 2023 has increased overall. So if you looked at the same property from one cycle from 2021 to 2023, from what I've seen, they've all been 2023 has all been higher than 2021, and it just sort of seems it's just indicating that the vacancy rates are higher in 2023.
Okay, is it based on the size of the building also? Percentage wise, or the number of suites?
I'm not sure.
All right. I thank you. Mr. Story, if you would like to proceed.
Yes, thank you very much. Okay, so 1976 St. Mary's, we've established where the property is and the physical characteristics. So ultimately, we'll just deal with matters of rent and cap rate. Again, on page 8, I've included the our swath of citywide, highly amenitized new builds. Mr. Seelan, you had asked the assessor about, you know, which properties are the most germane to our discussion here. I would suggest to you that the St. Boniface and St. Patel properties, they're a little bit older, but they're certainly within the same cohortship, I would say, built between 06 and 08. And you can see that they are indeed highly amenitized. Now, just to be clear, that first one on St. Boniface, the one bedrooms run between 711 and 860 square feet, so larger than ours, and they rent for $1.40 to $1.50 per square foot. Ours are smaller at $496 to $672, so we've applied $2 per foot, indicating a rent per month for those smaller units of $1,168. The two bedrooms in our property are between $924 and $1,108, and that falls squarely between that, or right in range with the 2-bedroom units that we see in St. Boniface and St. Patel, and they rent between $136 and $145 and $150 to $162. So again, we've been fairly liberal with our application of a rent per square foot of $1.75, leading to our estimation that the rents at the reference date would be $1,778 per door for a 2-bedroom. That would be on the very high end of the scale, to be fair. The 3 bedrooms are $1,176 to $1,304. You can see again in St. Boniface, St. Patel, they range from 1202 in St. Vital to 1229 to 1328 in St. Boniface. And they're running between cumulatively between 135 and 148. We've used $1.75. So I think that our rents are very, again, I will stress this, they're fairly liberal. We have erred on the high side of our application. Those 3-bedroom rents that we're suggesting in this property equate to $2,170 per door per month. That doesn't include parking. I've included parking once again at $55,400. Again, that's assuming full occupancy. Again, I've mentioned cap rates a number of times here. Now you're all aware, but I'll just point out we do have a separate and standalone document, the Altus cap rate study covering the 2023 and 2024 cycle. I know that you've all heard it before. I'm happy to speak to it in greater detail. We have sales informing our position, but just because I haven't mentioned it before, if you look on page 9, we have our groupings, our bifurcation of properties by age. Now, in this case, the properties that are the range that we're going to be discussing today are the 1999 plus. I've mentioned that if we look to the brokers, and this is again supported by the city's evidence cycle over cycle, as it is ours, we see cap rate compression between 0 and 25 basis points between the two cycles. Now, we're suggesting the newer properties ought to be considered anything built after 1999. Now, the properties that we're dealing with today are a fair bit newer than that. So I've adjusted my cap rates for all of these new properties, barring any atypical issues, to 5%. And again, that makes sense. And the assessor is quite right. There are not a great deal of new sales of new properties in the reference state. We do have 2390 McPhillips, but we're suggesting to you that that property was purchased with the intention to raise the rents. And mathematically, I'd ask the assessor, and he agreed that if you change the rents and hold all else constant, the cap rate would decompress. And frankly, if you use basic CMHC rents, the cap rate on 2390 becomes 5.59%. We also note that if you use the marketing circular with the NOI that they put to the market when the property was initially for sale, and then you use the price that was realized, we come to a 5% cap rate. So we do not believe that the city's cap rate calculation on McPhillips is appropriate. It should not be relied upon. And further to that, the property on Henderson is a much older building. It's a share sale, but we don't have a great deal of information about it, so it should also not be relied upon. However, what we can do is look at the brokers, and we can see that the degree of compression cycle over cycle is 0 to 25 basis points. So, Ms. Davidson, you'd asked about why these cap rates are different, and it is a good question. It's something that we're struggling with as well. So we've been consistent. We're using 5% for this property, and for the newer builds, especially if they're built on the newer side of that 1999 plus grouping. So all that said, we are very close in terms of our NOI. When we add the parking in, the assessor's at 594,361. We're at 593,791. So we're reasonably close. The issue that we have here, of course, and I mentioned that cost per unit that the model kicked out, that's exceptionally high. We don't typically see 315,000 per door at that reference date. So we've used a cap rate of 5%, leading us to an indicated market value of $11,875,815, which calculates, or which rounds, I should say, to $11,876,000. Once again, that value is $11,876,000. And that's still about $264,000 per door. So it does recognize that this is there's less suites, so economies of scale would be considered, and they are on the higher end. But we believe that value is fully supported. It may be a touch on the high side, but we are ultimately comfortable with the value of $11,876,000. And I do respectfully submit that the value ought not to exceed $11,876,000 for the reference date of April 1, 2021. And I thank you.
Thank you. Could you just repeat your NOI, please?
Absolutely. 593,791.
Thank you. Mr. Wong, did you have any questions?
No questions.
Mr. Seela?
No questions, Madam Chair. Thank you so much.
None for me either, thank you.
I also have no questions. Does either party have a wish for a summation?
No, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We would just simply ask that the cap rate cycle over cycle be consistent with what we're seeing in the market. So we're not worlds apart on the NOI, but we do believe that a 5% cap rate is appropriate, and respectfully submit that the cap rate be adjusted. Thank you.
Thank you both. We will be moving on to 25 Dalen Marshall Gate. Mr. Wong, whenever you are ready, you may proceed.
Okay, the subject property is 25 Dalen Marshall Gate. The file number is 22-4759. The roll number is 050-094-25950. The roll year is 2021. The assessed value is $40,584,000. This is a residential apartment that's 7 stories high. It was built in 2019, and it has 178 units with 148 indoor parking stalls and 107 outdoor parking stalls. On page 3 is an overview picture of the subject property with its location. It is located near Leela Avenue and McPhillips Street. On page 4 is our income valuation summary. We use average rents of $1,604, which is based off of their actual rents factor back. And the resulting net operating income is $2,029,000. Capped at 5%, the value is $40,584,000. But as with the previous properties, I'm revising my cap rate to 5.25%. The resulting value is $38,652,000.
I'm sorry, Mr. Wong, could you just repeat that quantum again, please?
Sure. The resulting value is $38,652,000.
Thank you.
On page 5 are some rent comparables showing that the rents we've used are in line with what's in the market. And on the bottom of page 5 are some expense comparables that range from 32 to 42%, which supports the model's expense ratio at 38.9%. On page 6 and 7 is information on how we derived our cap rates with some cap rate sales that range from 4 to 6.09%. On page 9 is information on the subject property. And on page 11 and 12 are some pictures of the subject property. So the model or the rents that we've applied are supported by actuals, and it's supported by the market. The expenses and the cap rate are also supported by the market. So I ask that you accept the revised value of $38,652,000.
I thank you. Mr. Story, before you begin questions, are you willing to accept this recommendation?
No, thank you, Madam Chair. We would like to proceed. We accept the 5.25 cap rate, but the issue of the rents remains. So I'll limit my questions to that matter. Thank you.
All right. If you'd like to proceed with questions.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So Mr. Wong, again, these these rents are, again, just to not to belabor this, but we're using, or the assessment department is using rents that are about 5 years post-reference and then factored back in this instance as well, correct?
They are actual rents that are factored back.
Okay. Well, when you say actual rents, they're asking rents, are they not? So they don't consider discounts, incentives, anything like that?
As far as I know, I'm not sure if any
Okay.
discounts were included.
Okay. And then when I look, but I mean, obviously the main issue is that they're post-reference, but okay, on page 5, these rental comps. Now, this property at Dayland Marshall, that's in, we'll call that Templeton Sinclair, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And all of these comps that you have, well, they're in the South End. Is it safe to say that these properties presumably would command a higher rental rate? Is that fair?
I'm not sure about that.
Okay. Are you familiar with 70 Bison Drive? That's Bison Point 2, I believe it's called. That's a luxury apartment right at the U of M. You familiar with that property?
A little bit.
Okay. Did it not seem odd to you then that your average monthly rent per unit is higher in our subject than it would be for a luxury property at the U of M in the south end of town versus the north?
Well, I'm sure if you pick out certain things, you can pick up some maybe inconsistencies. But if you look at it from an overall look, the rents that we've used are in line.
Okay, but just to be very fair, you don't have any rental comps in the northwest. Is that correct?
Correct.
And this property is actually, this is my neck of the woods. This is right next to, or right down the street, I guess, from the Lady Joyce, 2390 McPhillips, correct?
Yes.
And there are a number of new properties coming up there, and you haven't considered any of those. You've used, and these are, the reason that I point this out is because I know I know how far away these properties are from where I am, and I'm across the street from this property. So these would be in a completely different, call it a rental zone. Is that a fair comment?
Potentially.
Okay. All right. And well, I think, yeah, you know what, Madam Chair, those are my questions, and I thank you. I will leave my questions and comments there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Seelan.
Yes, just going back to the comparable rent comparables that you have on page 5. What would be the closest to the subject property if you had to pick one?
I guess it would be the Sterling Lion properties because of they have, I guess, they're built at a similar time, and they have 3 bedrooms as well as the subject property, and they are similar in size.
Thank you. I appreciate that. That's all my questions, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Davidson.
I have no questions, thank you.
I also have no questions. So, Mr. Story, if you would like to proceed.
Yes, thank you very much. Okay, so our first property here is the sister property to the next one that we'll hear. This is 25 Dayland Marshall Gate. Now this, again, this is in the northwest quadrant, close to the north perimeter. This would be north of Beecher, south of Swales, and then west down Templeton on McPhillips. So if you're familiar with that stretch, that's exactly where it is. There's sort of call it a motor mile, a number of car dealerships down that stretch of McPhillips. And if you go west down Templeton, there are some new apartments being built. And that, of course, will lead you into what we call the expansion of Amber Trail or Amber Meadow. So that's where we are. It is it's a new build, of course. It was built in 19, and it does have 43 one-bedroom suites, 121 two-bedroom suites, and 14 three-bedroom suites. So a typical suite mix, just to reference back to the first property that we talked about when we see these new builds, that would be what we would expect to see. Total of 178 units, and the site size is 2.5 acres. They have above ground and underground parking. Now, in terms of my comps, you'll see on page 8, we've used the same methodology to determine an appropriate rent per month based on the site size. You'll see, and Mr. Seelan, you can appreciate this, the properties in Old Kildonan, I think you'd asked what the closest ones would be from the assessor. I would suggest to you that Sterling Lion is quite far away from this property at effectively at Templeton and McPhillips. So we've used these two on Innsbruck. They're managed by the same manager of our subject of the next two properties. So it gives us a pretty good indication of what the rental expectations ought to be. These are built in 13 and 14. Our subject is built in 19. So in terms of a close comp, I think this is about as close as we might presumably get to a dead-on comp, so to speak. So ultimately, if you look at our one bedrooms in this property, the average is 610 square feet. In the Innsbruck properties, they range between 720 and 890, and those are commanding anywhere between $1.33 and $1.45. We've used $1.75, so again, we're at the higher end. The two-bedroom suites range between 948 to 1,112, so they are larger suites, and again, that falls in line with what we're seeing in those two indicators on Old Kildonan, and those range between $1.19 and $1.43. We've used $1.50. The three bedrooms are quite large, 1,377, and that's precisely what we're seeing again on Innsbruck. Those range between $1,330 and $1,500 per square foot, and they range from $1 to $1.12 per foot. We've been very again, and I don't mean to belabor this, but we have erred on the higher side on a per square foot basis. Ours are slightly smaller, obviously, than 1,500 square feet, but keeping with the desires of the neighborhood for larger suites, we've used $1.50, and that makes sense. So ultimately, our one bedroom rents as of April 1, 2018 are $1,068. Our two bedrooms are $1,523, and we're estimating that the three bedrooms ought to be $2,066 per door per month. The cap rate is no longer in dispute. We have used 5.25. We do recognize that there's parking income that comes to the owner that would be expected, and on page 10 you can see that we've calculated that as $114,480. So ultimately, our effective gross income using rents that are commensurate with the actual Old Kildonan area, the Northwest Quadrant, comes to $3,129,729. That figure, once again, is $3,129,729. The expense ratio of approximately 39% is accepted. Again, that's maybe on the low side, but we will see how the property fares as time marches on. But for the short term, at a minimum, that seems to be on the low side of the acceptable range, but we have accepted it for the purpose of our exercise today. So ultimately, our NOI is calculated as $1,905,379. That figure, once again, is $1,905,379, with a cap rate of 5.25, leading us to an indicated market value as of 2021, based on an April 1, 2018 reference date of $36,292,932, which we then, of course, round to $36,293,000, and we do respectfully submit that the value not exceed $36,293,000. I had resubmitted this brief because I had a rent roll that was post-reference of December 2020. It didn't have any, it was all vacant, but I since expunged that information and resubmitted. So if it does say late, that would be why. I noticed my error and I removed the offending material. The marketing photos are included. You can see these are staged marketing photos. They look good. It's a new property. Quality would be considered good. Again, and it does have amenities, so it is a high quality property in the Northwest. similar to the two properties on Innsbrook that we've used as proxy rents and comps. So ultimately, we believe that our value of $36,293,000 is appropriate. And with that, I'm open to your questions, and I thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Wong, questions?
No questions.
Mr. Seeler?
Yes, have you inspected this property recently?
I've not inspected it, but I drove past it again. I live very close, so I drove past and had a look at it. Well, I've seen it a number of times, but for the purpose of this exercise, I've done a desktop review, and I drove past it on it was Friday of last week, so very recently, very familiar with the area.
Thanks so much. That's all my questions, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Davidson?
I have no questions, thank you.
I also have no questions. Does either party have a wish for a summation?
Thank you. Well, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Story?
Just very quickly, we would request that the post-reference material not form the basis of the NOI for this property or the others, and I thank you.
Thank you. We will move on to 25 Dale Marshall Gate, roll year 2023, and Mr. Wong, whenever you are ready to proceed.
Okay, the subject property is 25 Dale and Marshall Gate. The file number is 22-4760. The roll number is 050-094-25950. The roll year is 2023. The assessed value is $44,803,000. This is a residential apartment that's 7 stories high. It's built in 2019 and has 178 suites with 148 indoor parking stalls and 107 outdoor parking stalls. On page 3 is a picture of the subject property with its location. On page 4 is our valuation summary. The average rents that were used are $1,708, which is based off of their actual rents factor back. And that resulted in a net operating income of $2,128,000. Capped at 4.75%. The estimated market value is $44,803,000. On page 5 are some rent comparables showing that the rents we've used are in line with what's in the market. And on the bottom of page 5 are some expense comparables ranging from 33 to 42%. This supports the model's expense ratio, which is 39%. On page 6 is information on how we derived our cap rates. And on page 7 are some cap rate sales. Once again, the sales of McPhillips and Henderson are the most supportive of the model's 4.75% cap rate. And the remaining pages are identical to the previous brief. So the rents that we've applied are supported by the market, as are the expenses and the cap rate. So I ask that you maintain the assessed value at $44,803,000.
I thank you. Mr. Story, questions?
Yes, just very quickly, Madam Chair. Mr. Wong, again, so just for the record, the rents that were used were again post-reference, correct?
They are based off of their actuals. Factor back.
Right. So they are post-reference, correct?
They are. That's how it is calculated.
Okay. And then these rental comps that you're using, these are not in the Northwest at all, are they?
No, they are in the different parts of the city.
Okay. And typically these would be areas of the city based on, I mean, if you just look at CMHC, these areas would typically command a higher rental rate, would they not?
Potentially, but like I said, the rent that has been applied is representative, is accurately reflecting what they're getting.
Well, it's you're using post-reference material and it's asking rents, not actual rents, correct? And you're not considering incentives, discounts, anything like that, right? You're going by what's posted online effectively. Is that correct?
We're going by what they've indicated to us as their being their rents.
Indicated to you as their rents. Well, are you not using a rental a listing?
I mean, sometimes we get rent rolls from the property owner.
Okay. All right. And then in terms of these cap rates that you've submitted here, I think we've dealt with 2390, we've dealt with Henderson, but just to be very clear, you have no calculations in direct evidence for the board to consider. Is that fair?
We have not provided calculations, but they have been stabilized in a similar manner, and that's how they've all been stabilized and calculated in a similar way.
Okay, but the city has not been transparent in the assumptions that they've made or the calculations that they've made in deriving these cap rates, correct?
With regards to some of them, the 2390 McPhillips rebuttal, we've provided rebuttal information, and that information has been provided before.
Okay, so since you have the information on 2390 McPhillips and you're using it as a cap rate comp, why haven't you used it as a rental comp?
This is these were the rental comparables that I felt were comparable, and like once again, they are in line with what they're actually getting. So
okay, but I mean, you would have had actual rents as of 17 and certainly as of 20 for a property that's right down the street. So, and we've talked so much about 2390 McPhillips, excuse me. So I'm trying to figure out why that wouldn't, if it is to be used, even with this calculation that I don't believe to be accurate, why would it not be used as a rental comp if it's right down the street?
it could potentially be used, but it wasn't in this case.
And the rents in 2390 McPhillips, if you were to use them as a comparable for either 25 or 55 Dayland Marshall, they would be much, much lower than what you're suggesting here in your table, would they not?
I'm going to say that the rents from 2390 McPhillips were not used.
Okay. Those are my questions, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Seelan, questions?
No questions, Madam Chair. Thank you so much.
I have no questions either. Thank you.
I also have no questions. Mr. Story, you would like to proceed with your brief?
Yes, thank you very much. Okay, so we've established that we're in the Northwest. I've used rents. Again, we've not relied on any post-reference material. This is the theme of this docket, but just to be very clear, we have not used post-reference material. So ultimately, this comes down to the rents. We are reasonably close, actually. In fact, we're higher. Our rents are higher, but we're using our methodology. I'm going to adjust that cap rate from 5.25 to 5%. So in the interest of narrowing our issues, we would suggest to you that a cap rate of no less than 5% is appropriate. And sorry, I'm just going to recalculate this. So $2,146,76, capitalized by a 5% cap rate, comes to an indicated market value of $42,921,520, which we then round to $42,922,000. So that is our request for this property. Again, we've indicated that the cap rate on McPhillips should be calculated as for 2390 should be no less than 5%, maybe as high as 2.59%, based on what we know of the market and compression over the previous cycle. We do believe that 25 basis point adjustment is supported, and it is indeed what was known to market participants. We do note here in our income summary that there is a move-in incentive of 1 month free or 1 year free parking. So we've not included that here, but it does just speak to the larger issue that we've been talking about today about the danger of using posted rents and factoring them back. This is just another reason why we ought to be very, very cautious of that and certainly not include post-reference material. Ultimately, our value comes to 42,922,000, and that is my presentation, and I thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Wong, questions?
So I guess on your page 9, you use their actual rents.
On page 9, sorry, we have, right. So we have 2020 rents. So those are relevant to the reference date. So we're using the actuals.
And is it higher than what the model is, or is it higher than the rate that we've applied, that the assessment department has applied?
In this instance, the rents, no, but the rents, once we factor parking, yes. And parking, we're actually, again, we're on the very high side because we're suggesting parking at full occupancy. So
the effective gross income that the model has estimated, in a sense, is lower than what they've actually gotten. Is that correct?
In this instance, the effective gross income that you've used post-reference material, as you've said, right? We've used the actuals, and in this instance, yes, that is correct. But we do note there are incentives and free parking. So we are using, as I've mentioned a number of times today, we are deferring to the higher end, and we're using a 4.2 vacancy, which is, again, maybe on the low side. But yeah, ultimately, the effective gross income that we've applied is slightly higher than what the assessment department is suggesting. So yes, and ultimately our NOI is higher in this instance. But the cap rate so ultimately this is an issue regarding cap rate. We're using a 5% cap rate. We think that's supported. And yes, we're not simply using the lower NOI. This is our methodology, and we are very consistent in its application. So yes.
That's all my questions.
Thank you. Mr. Seelan.
Would the northwest quadrant of the city be a less desirable area to have a rental property?
Well, I'm a big supporter of the Northwest, so it's hard for me to say. I might be biased, but no, I think that it's a different rental market. So if we're looking to, for example, if we're looking at Bison, you might be looking at students, international students, that type of thing. The Northwest, actually, what I will say is the Templeton Sinclair typically has not had a great deal of newer construction. There is a fair bit down Leela, Powers, Andrews, that area. There are some older, called MERB era 1970s builds. So there has not been a great deal of new construction in the Northwest, particularly in Templeton Sinclair. But we have seen new properties certainly throughout the Maples in the last, call it 5 or 10 years, and we're now starting to see new development down Templeton. So I guess, I think the quadrant is desirable, but the one thing that I would suggest is that there may be, as we're seeing throughout the city, there may be a glut of new properties coming online. So when you go from having very little supply to having a great deal of new supply, there's new properties coming up behind the Honda dealership, behind the Gautier property, and all down that part of Templeton up to Innsbrook, and then further west even. So I don't think it's undesirable, but I would say that there's probably a great deal of supply that's hitting the market. And I suppose we will see in the coming years if demand is there, or if we will continue to see a more aggressive discount and incentive strategy for some of those owners. So I don't think it's undesirable, but I would say that certainly the rental rates on Sterling Lion, for example, are just, they would be higher than what we would typically see in Old Kildonan.
Thank you. That's all my questions, Madam Chair. Much appreciated.
Thank you.
Ms. Davis, I have no questions, thank you.
I just have one question in regards to the parking.
Yes.
So you worked out the parking that you've indicated on your page 10, the 114,000, that was based on the 255 parking spaces?
That was based on, sorry, we have it here. It is based on that that count, that parking count, yes. 255. Okay. Yeah. And that's, and I should say, if you look at the rent roll, which is from December of 2020, starting on page 14, that's where we see some of these, well, what we call expected rents. So again, well, we'll see how things materialize, but yes, that's formed the basis of our valuation. So that is the document, but again, it is germane to our reference date. So that's all of the figures that we've used in terms of our workup are based on expected rent. You can see that the vacancy is well, it's completely vacant, but this is what the owner developers expectations are. I suppose we'll see if those materialize, but ultimately, again, as I've mentioned, we have erred on what we'll call the reasonably high side, and we've used the actual expected parking income as indicated by the rent roll.
All right, and thank you. Does either party have a wish for a summation?
Sorry, I guess would I be able to just sort of ask one more question?
Yes, go ahead.
I guess on page 14.
Yep.
Say unit 101 has a leasing area of 1,112 square feet, and unit 103 is 948. Those are probably 2 bedrooms, correct?
Well, hold on. Sorry, the unit 101,
yeah,
that is 1,112 square feet. That is, if you go to the back of my brief, that has, okay, so that's suite C. That is a 2-bedroom, you are correct.
Okay.
And that's on page 31. You can see the actual layout of that suite.
So the rent for that 2-bedroom is about 1,747, and the rent for the other smaller unit is 1,657. So right. Would it be safe to say like a 2-bedroom might be around close to 1,700 per unit?
Well, I'm showing you that what their expected rent, again, this is theoretical. You can see that it's vacant, right? And we're not considering discounts. We're not considering incentives. I suppose if you want to get very technical, you would have to, if for example, in the first year, there's a free month of rent, you would want to take an effective rent, because if you're suggesting that it's 1,700 per month, but you're only collecting 11 months as opposed to 12, that calculation would change, right? In terms of the different rental rates per square foot, I think that's what we've outlined in terms of economies of scale in most of our briefs here today. So that makes sense. And that's just further support to what we're saying.
Okay, but it would be around 1,700 maybe?
Without any consideration for incentives or discounts, right? And then if you look,
okay.
But hold on.
Okay, that would be all my questions.
So Madam Chair, I'd like to finish, please. Page 9, you can see in our remarks that we have move-in incentives of 1 month free rent or 1 year free parking. So I think it's important that we do, in answering your question, Mr. Long, I think it's important that we consider the actual effective rents and with consideration to discounts.
Okay, thank you. And yeah, that would be everything. And I guess no require for summation from me. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And Mr. Story?
Yeah, just very quickly, Madam Chair. We are suggesting once again, because this is a matter of cap rate only, we're suggesting that the market is telling us that the cap rate compression cycle over cycle is approximately 0 to 25 basis points. The assessor is suggesting, I think, 75. That is not supported by anything we're seeing in the market. So we would suggest that cap rate of 5% is absolutely appropriate. And I do point out that we have erred on the higher side of the NOI. So that 5% I believe to be very well supported, and I thank you.
Thank you. Is anyone requiring a brief recess at this point before we proceed?
If I could have 5 minutes to go to the washroom.
Yes, of course. Of course, Mr. Wong. Yeah. I would like to call this meeting back to order. We are going to proceed to the next property, which is 55 Dalen Marshall Gates. And Mr. Wong, whenever you are ready to proceed.
Okay. The subject property is 55 Dalen Marshall Gate. The file number is 22-4762. The roll number is 050-094-25955. The roll year is 2021, and the assessed value is 40,568,000. It's a residential apartment that's 7 stories high. It was built in 2020, and it has 178 suites with 140 indoor parking stalls and 121 outdoor parking stalls. On page 3 is a picture of the subject property with its location. This is a twin property to the previous property, twin to 25 Dalen Marshall Gate. On page 4 is our income valuation summary. We use average rents of $1,603, which is the rent that we had overridden based off of their actuals factored back. That results in a net operating income of $2,028,000. And as with the previous properties, I'm revising my cap rate to 5.25%. And the resulting value is $38,636,000. So going on to page 5, the top of page 5 are some rent comparables showing that the rents we've used are in line with what's in the market. And on the bottom chart on page 5 are some expense comparables ranging from 32 to 42%. This supports the model's expense ratio at 38.9%. On page 5, or on page 6 and 7 is information on how we derived our cap rates. On page 9 is some information on the property's amenities. And on page 11 and 12 are some interior and exterior pictures of the subject property. So the model rent that, or the rent that we've applied is supported by their actuals and market rents, and the expenses and model expense and cap rate are also supported by the market. So I ask that you accept the revised value of $38,636,000.
Thank you. Mr. Story, questions?
Yes, and just to be clear, Madam Chair, I would like to proceed, though I am accepting that 5.25 cap rate as we've seen multiple times today. Thank you. Okay, so again, Mr. Wong, you wouldn't be able to tell me or the board what the city is estimating a 1-bedroom would rent for, a 2-bedroom, or a 3-bedroom? Is that fair?
It is a blended rate.
Okay, I understand that, but you don't have that breakdown?
No,
Fair, okay. And all right, and then again, you've used rents, asking rents without any consideration to discounts or incentives, and those rents are indeed 5 years approximately post-reference, correct?
these rents are likely based off of the information that we received from the property owner.
Okay, and that information is post-reference, correct?
It is after the reference date.
Okay.
It is a fair and accurate representation of the subject property.
Okay, and in terms of the rental comps that you've used, once again, you've used comps in the south end of town. 2 of them I note are on Sterling Lion. Is that fair? So not in the subject vicinity, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and I think I will leave that there, Madam Chair. Oh, actually, one other question, Mr. Wong. Because these are sister properties, we've seen before when there are multiple buildings on site, if these 2 properties were on the same roll, would the model give it a higher cap rate?
Potentially.
Okay, those are my questions. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Seelan.
All my questions have been answered. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Ms. Davidson.
I have no questions, thank you.
I also have no questions. Mr. Story, if you would like to proceed.
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Chair. So just very quickly, this 55 Dayland Marshall is indeed the sister building to 25 Dayland Marshall. They're right next to each other. They effectively function as a single economic unit for all intents and purposes. It is a 7-story wood frame structure. It's on the east side of Dayland Marshall Gate, north of Templeton. Now they're calling this the Leela North section of Old Kildonan, but I suppose you could consider this Templeton Sinclair as well. It's all in that general area. I have a map for you. You can see on page 5. But again, suffice to say, we are indeed in Old Kildonan. In terms of how we've worked up our rents, you've heard this many times today. But again, on page 8, I've provided you with the rationale. We've not relied on any post-reference material. And I do point out that this is, of course, a reference date of April 1, 2018. So once again, the 2017 reference here is the most applicable. So we have 2 indices in Old Kildonan. They are indeed on Innsbrook. They're very close to the subject. And I won't belabor this because we've gone over this. If it's okay, Madam Chair, I'll just sort of give you the Coles notes very quickly. But ultimately, it's a very similar position. The properties are almost identical. So we've used the exact same methodology. In terms of parking, we've used $100 per stall per month for indoor and $40 per stall per month for the outdoor. Again, I visited the exterior of this property very recently. I've seen a number of interior photos from construction up until marketing and lease up. So have a pretty good handle on this property, I would suggest, and I believe that the rents that we're using are well in line with what the market would have expected as of April 1, 2018. On page 10, I have our workup. You can see that our effective gross income is calculated as $3,129,729. That expense ratio, again, is slightly on the lower side for a property with underground parking and elevators, but as time goes on, we'll monitor the expenses on a site-specific basis. So even though that is somewhat low, we have accepted it for the purpose of our exercise here today, I suppose in the interest of narrowing our issues. Ultimately, our 5.25 cap rate is now agreed upon. So with an NOI of $1,910,386 and with a capitalization rate of 5.25, we come to an indicated market value of $36,388,309. That value, once again, is $36,388,309, which we then, of course, round to $36,388,000. And the balance of my brief is very similar to the previous. You can see those same marketing photos. They use the same marketing photos for 25 and 55. As I mentioned, they're effectively one economic unit, though they are on 2 rolls. And we have seen in the past where there are multiple buildings on site that we may see a higher cap rate, but we haven't made any adjustment there. We're confident in 5.25. We feel very confident with the NOI that we've applied, so effectively, we do respectfully submit that the value not exceed 36,388,000. And with that, I'm open to your questions, and I thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Wong,
No questions.
Mr. Seelan.
Again, with this property, the sister property, there was rental incentives for rent and parking, I believe, as far as monthly incentives to move in, I guess.
Yes, and that is typical in this area where, as I mentioned in the last for the last property, this area went from having very little rental availability to a great deal. So it is fairly competitive. Though I believe that the discounts and incentives would be germane to the next cycle as opposed to this one. So I don't know that would have been known. It may have been anticipated at April 1 of 2018, but it certainly would have been known at April 1 of 2021, which we'll discuss in the next file. Yeah.
Thank you. That's all my questions, Madam Chair.
I have no questions, thank you.
I also have no questions. Does either party wish for a summation?
No, thank you.
Just once again, Madam Chair, we would ask that the panel not consider any post-reference material that would not have been known to market participants as of the reference date. And I will leave my comments there. Thank you.
Thank you. We will move on to again 55 Dale and Marshall Gate, roll year 2023, and Mr. Wong, whenever you are prepared, you proceed.
Okay, the subject property is 55 Dale and Marshall Gate. The file number is 22-4764. The roll number is 050-094-25955. The roll year is 2023. The assessed value is 44,784,000. This is a residential apartment block that's 7 stories high. It was built in 2020. And it has 178 suites with 147 indoor parking stalls and 121 outdoor parking stalls. Page 3 is a picture of the subject property with its location. On page 4 is our income valuation summary. We use average rents of $1,707. The resulting NOI is $2,127,000, capped at 4.75%. Our estimated market value is $44,784,000. On page 5 are some rent comparables showing that the rents reviews are in line with what's in the market. And on the bottom of page 5 are some expense comparables showing that range from say 32 or 33 to 42%. This supports the model's expense ratio at 39%. On page 6 is information on how we derived our cap rates, and on page 7 are some cap rate sales. Once again, the sales of McPhillips and Henderson at 4.79 and 4.28 are supportive of the 4.75 that is applied for the subject property. The remainder of my brief is information on the property, on its amenities, features, as well as some exterior and interior photos. So the model or the rent that has been applied is in line with their actuals and the market, as well as the expenses and the cap rate, which are both supported by the market. Having said that, I ask that you maintain the assessed value at $44,784,000.
Hi, thank you, Mr. Wong. Mr. Story, questions?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So this is effectively just a cap rate issue at this stage, and I'll ask some of my comments about post-reference material carry forward. But Mr. Wong, in terms of your cap rate, I'll ask you one last time here. The evidence that you've submitted for the previous cycle and for this cycle, there's nothing here that would suggest a 50 basis point cap rate compression for any of the high rise, low rise, A or B multifamily assets. Is that correct? Cycle over cycle.
I can't really say about the previous cycle. All I can say is that the cap rates that we presented here are calculated and stabilized, and so I believe that they are accurate representation in terms of cap rates.
Okay, but the cap rate that was applied to this property is not based on your table, it's based on the model, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and in terms of your model, how many properties in that data set were from the Northwest, for example?
I'm not sure.
Okay, and how many were built after 1999?
You can keep asking those questions, but I don't have the details for those, that type of detail.
I'm sorry, so you don't know, is it safe to say you're unaware of the inputs that went into the model that made this modeled cap rate? Is that fair?
I don't have the details for that were used in terms of determining the model cap rates.
Right. Okay. And in terms of the cap rates that you've mentioned, for 2390, we've established that I think those rents were indeed below CMHC at the time of purchase, correct?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
The cap rate that has been presented, the 4.79, is calculated based off stabilizing their net operating income for the 3 years prior to the sale.
Okay, and just so the board is aware, I know we mentioned it once, but just to sort of wrap up here, the purchaser was a knowledgeable purchaser. They were a National Real Estate Investment Trust. Is that correct?
I'm not sure.
You're not sure who purchased the property?
No.
Oh, okay. Are you aware then that the rents were indeed raised on turnover? Were you not aware of that, or are you aware of that?
I'm not sure what that has to do with how we calculated the cap rates.
Well, if the rents were low at the time of acquisition, and if they were raised upon acquisition, then that cap rate would decompress. It would become higher, correct? Mathematically, again.
I guess I don't really want to get into a back and forth with you. I guess I've told you how we calculated the cap rate, and I believe the cap rates to be accurate.
Okay, and in terms of all of these cap rates, Mr. Wong, on page 7, the city has not been transparent in terms of the calculations, in terms of any assumptions that would have been made. There are indeed no calculations and direct evidence for these.
Not in direct evidence, but
okay.
If you would like, we can send it to you.
No, it's fine. I would just like to know. And again, that property on Henderson, again, that was based. That's a share sale, correct? Based on what we know.
Yes, and I'm not sure if that has anything to do with whether it's a good sale or not, because when I look at appraisal reports, share sales are used all the time, and actually Altus has used the share sale of 333 Ward in the previous cap rate study. So I believe that they're valid sales. Right.
Okay, but in terms of that sale, because it's a share sale, we don't necessarily know the details of it. But are you aware of any non-realty items or other parcels that were included in that sale?
I am not aware, but I do believe it is a valid sale, and we use that sale against their income and expenses for the subject property.
Okay. Okay, I think I'll leave it there, Madam Chair. Those are my questions. Thank you.
Yes, have you inspected this property by chance?
I have not.
Thank you. That's all my questions, Madam Chair. Thank you so much.
Ms. Davidson?
I have no questions, thank you.
And I have no questions. You would like to proceed, Mr. Story?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So ultimately, this is simply a cap rate issue. Now, this property was between the two on Dale and Marshall. This was the second one that was built, but they are sister properties. So we did look to the developer's expectations because we have a December 2020 rent roll showing expected rent. So now, again, whether or not those rents will materialize is one thing, but in putting us in the eyes of the market, we can see very clearly what the developer was anticipating. So we have used the rent roll from the sister property because it is relevant to our reference date. This property was built in 2020. The sister property was built in 2019. So our NOI is indeed higher, a touch higher than the assessor. So ultimately, this is a cap rate issue. I've mentioned a number of times that we are not seeing 50 basis points of compression in multifamily year over year. We've supported the 0 to 25% compression with the brokers' reports, with our own calculations. You've been provided with a full Altus cap rate study. We've been very transparent in providing all of our calculations and all of our assumptions. But ultimately, just to conclude, the cap rate compression that we're seeing in multifamily, again, if it is between 0 and 25 basis points, where we are seeing it is on the higher register, the higher scale of quality. So I am comfortable adjusting our initial cap rate of 5.25 to 5%. So we are indeed using a higher NOI. So I don't anticipate that being an issue with the assessor. But our estimated NOI for 2023, based on April 1, 2021, is $2,146,076. And when we apply a 5% cap rate, as we've been consistent in doing so with all of these second year of the supplementary assessments, that leads us to an indicated market value of $42,922,000. And I believe that's actually identical to the sister building. So that makes sense. They should have, and I think, to be fair, I think the assessor has a fairly similar, the two properties have fairly similar assessments, which is correct. But ultimately, we are using a higher NOI than the department, but our cap rate at 5% is well supported. So ultimately, we do suggest that our amended value not exceed $42,922,000, and that concludes my presentation on this property. And I thank you.
I thank you. Actually, could you just repeat your NOI?
Oh, absolutely. Yep. It's I think I may have missed it actually. It's $2,146,076. So 2,146,076. Yep.
Okay. Mr. Wong, questions?
I was just wondering, like I guess on your page 9, your effective gross income is $3,525,000, correct?
Our effective gross income after parking is $3,525,092, correct?
Yeah, and I guess for the previous cycle, your effective gross income was $3,129,000. That's about a $400,000 difference in effective gross income. Why the big difference?
Well, again, I think we're fairly high on the second year because we're using expected rents. There may be higher vacancy. There may be greater discounts. So sure, I think you're right. We may be high on this one, but that's fine. We're trying to be fair. The previous cycle, we're relying on market data. We're not using 5-year post-reference data. So yeah, I feel very comfortable with what we've submitted today. It is higher, but again, we're using what the developer is expecting. So we may have a lower effective gross income as time marches on, but again, we're trying to err on the side of, we've tried to be liberal and we've erred on the side of on the high side, quite frankly, for all of these assessments today. But I think that's the fair way to treat these buildings.
Okay, so this one was based off of their actual rents, and the previous one was based off of market rents?
No, so I think I've mentioned this a number of times, but just to be very clear, we've used the expected rents based on the sister property's 2020 rent roll. So now, and you can appreciate this, the expected rents will be based on posted rents. We don't necessarily know the degree of discounts. We don't necessarily know the degree of incentives that might be required. So it's fairly high, but we'll see as time goes on what the actual economic picture is. But we have, we've been optimistic. Let's say that.
That's all my questions.
Thank you. Mr. Seelan?
No questions, Madam Chair. Thank you so much.
Ms. Davidson?
I have no questions. Thank you.
I just have one question, but it's for Mr. Wong. When the model is looking at the cap rate in regards to apartment buildings, is it taking into account, or is that information input in terms of amenities that are offered in various buildings?
I don't believe, I don't believe so, but I don't know.
All right, and thank you. Does either party have a wish for summation?
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, just very quickly, Madam Chair, I would just like to point out that on every file today, the assessor has used or relied on post-reference material. That is not appropriate. We've submitted the Broadway Square decision outlining as such, so we would suggest that the NOI that have been submitted by the assessment department here be that weighted consideration be given to our submission, as we are not relying on post-reference material. Further to that, the cap rates that have been applied here, we have not had any sort of illumination as to how the model derives cap rates for different properties or for different assets. So the modeled cap rate, of course, remains something of a mystery. So we would ask that the board defer to our submission in this case, as we have been consistent and we have not used, or nor have we relied upon post-reference material. And I thank you for your time today.
I thank you both, Mr. Wong and Mr. Story, for your time, patience, and your excellent briefs. And we have heard all the items on the docket this morning, and this hearing is closed.
Thank you very much. Have a good day.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you.